Have you ever worked on an Excel spreadsheet, and as you work on it, it has grown to quite a long length, and you find that while sorting does help you find the records that you want, you'd really rather hide the records that are somewhat irrelevant, at least for the moment, and you'd like to really concentrate on the ones that meet a certain criteria. Well, you can do that using Excel filters. Hi, I'm Terry, one of the Consumer Technology Specialists for Mid-Continent Public Library, and let's investigate Excel filters. As we look at our example spreadsheet today, we can see that it has last name, first name, district, and state. So evidently these are employees, and we have states that belong to certain districts, and then we have that employee's title or department that they work for, and we have their birth date and their years employed. Now, this is such a large company, and as I scroll down here, I see only about 20 records, so I'm assuming that these are people who have done something really special. Maybe they're going to get some sort of an award that we want to distribute to them, call attention to them for, extra service to the company, whatever it is. And because it's only a list of 20, we might be tempted to sort this information, and maybe it's by district. And that would work. With 20 records, it wouldn't be too bad. We could find the district that we want without too much trouble, and then we could go from there, maybe print their certificates or whatever. However, if we have a list of 1,000 or 10,000 employees, which would certainly be possible with large companies, all of a sudden, all of that sorting doesn't help a whole lot, because if we have someone in the middle or toward the end of that sort, then you could be scrolling a long time before you see the information that you actually want to look at. So a better option, and again, the larger the spreadsheet, the more this comes into play, the better option is really to filter so that you see the records that you want to see and you hide the records that you don't want to see. To filter a list of, in this case, employees, we have two options. The first one is to go to the Home tab on the ribbon and then go to the far right to the Editing group. And in the middle of the Editing group, we have a Sort and Filter button. When we click that drop down, well, first of all, we get sort options, but then we get filter, and all we do is click on that option to turn it on. Now, because I had clicked in this list, we can see that Excel has acknowledged that we do have column headings, and it's placed what people will call the auto filter button right here to the right of each one of those column headings. Now, with the auto filter button, you can click on that little drop down arrow, and it will give you a list of all of the unique entries that are within a column. So if I have repeats, for example with state, if I click on that drop down, it will only show California once, even though we have several people who are from California. So it just gives you a unique list of all of the entries within a column, and then we simply select what we want to filter. For our first example, let's look at something fairly simple. Let's say that we want to choose just one district. And as I look at this column, I have W's for West and E's for East and C for Central, and I certainly have multiple entries with each one of those districts. Well, as I click on the drop down for district and come to the bottom, we can first of all see that we have decided to select all of the different kinds of district choices. And then you can see that the C's are only listed one time, so it's what is unique. And we only see one of each one of those values. So we see the C and the E and the W, and they're all checked. So to be able to choose what we want to see, we're going to click on that checkbox to turn off Select All, and now we could click on, say, the box for W, put our little check mark there, click OK, and now we only see the records that have a W for West in them. Now, sometimes you inherit a spreadsheet and you look at it and say, I think there should be more records here. Be sure to look to find the auto filter buttons, and if you see them, then look for this funnel that appears when records have been filtered. And so I can tell that I have filtered by district because I have the funnel button there. Now also, as I look at the left, you can see that I have record 2 and then row 3, and then there's kind of a space here between 3 and 7. There's also a space between 7 and 9, a space between 9 and 17, and another one between 17 and 22. So all of those are clues that I have filtered the data and that I'm not seeing the entire list. To turn off this filter, because let's say that we only wanted to print this information and now we want to get back to the original spreadsheet and see all of the records, we simply click on that funnel button and come back to Select All and click OK, and now we can see all of the records. Well, let's do one more example. Let's go to Title Department, click on that drop down. And again, we want to remove the Select All. Let's scroll down a little bit and find IT this time. Click OK, and now we can see just the people who work in IT. And again, to turn that off, we'll click on that funnel button, click Select All, and then select OK. Now we do have some other options for filtering besides just checking the boxes, so let's look at a couple of those, and we'll start with, say, last name, and we'll click on the drop down. And as we go through this drop down, we of course have sort options first, but then before we see those check boxes at the bottom, we have the option for text filters. And this gives you so much power in how you try to filter things. So let's say that we want to say that the last name equals Smith, but maybe it's spelled S-M-Y-T-H-E or something. Or we could say that it doesn't equal that spelling, but we want S-M-I-T-H. And so we could kind of work with that a little bit. We could say that it begins with a certain letter or ends with a certain letter. So sometimes when you are looking for cell contents, you're not sure how things are spelled. And this gives you some latitude to say, well, I think it could be this, but I'm a little mystified about, say, the middle spelling or something. We could say that it contains a certain value or doesn't contain a certain value, or we can just go straight to the custom filter. Well, let's say we want to go with something that begins with, and we could say, well, we want to have something that starts with S. And notice that we have a note down here that says we can use wildcards. So we can use the question mark for a single character or the asterisk for a series of characters. So we'll try that in a second. But let's just start with it begins with S and click OK. And so now we have the 3 people whose last name starts with S. But we could go back and play with that a little bit and say, yeah, we really want to find Smith. And there are several ways we could do that. Let's play with one of them. Let's go back to our filter here. And where we have text filters, we have that begins with, and let's click it again. And we can revise that a little bit. So we could say it begins with S, and it ends with an H. And let's click OK. And there is Smith. Now how fun is that? Well, let's go back and do another filter. Let's click on our funnel button here. and let's just do a select all. Or do you notice how now that I've selected this text filters, we have another option for getting back to the original list, and that is to clear the filter from last name. So we'll click clear the filter from last name, and we can do that. Now let's say that we are really interested in William here, and I'm not even going to try to pronounce his name, but we know that it starts with a B and it ends with a T. So let's go back, and this time I'm going to use a text filter, but you know what, let's go to the custom filter, because we could say that it equals, it has a B, we can use the asterisk for multiple characters, and it ends with a T. Let's click OK. And that's another way that we could do a logical search or filter to find just this one person. And you're going to start feeling like, wow, when I apply filters, it's almost limitless what I can do to try to find the information that I particularly need. Let's do one more. Let's go back. And again, we'll clear that filter, because there is something that I would like to look at here. Let's go back with last name, text filters, and we'll go to the custom filter. And we can say that for the last name, we want to find the last names that begin with, let's say, B. And then we have a logical choice here, and or. Now, and limits the list. And because of that, we wouldn't want to say that a last name begins with B and begins with S, because both of those can't be true. But what we can say is we want to have someone who has their last name beginning with B, or their last name begins with S. Now it will look for the B's in the list and the S's in the list, and it will give us a list of both. So again, and limits because each one has to be true, or expands because it can be this, or a combination. So let's do OK. And now we have anybody who has a last name that begins with S or a last name that begins with B. And again, to remove that filter, we'll just click on that funnel and clear the filter from last name. Now, besides text filters, we can also use number filters. And dates are considered numbers, as well as just sort of plain numbers. So first of all, let's go to the birth date here, and let's click that drop down. And yes, I can definitely choose just a specific year, but let's go to date filters, because this is sort of like amazing, all of the different choices that we have. So when we look at date filters, it's not only equals, before, after, between, tomorrow, today, yesterday, but then it starts looking at week possibilities, month possibilities, quarters, years, year to date, all dates in a certain period, or you can even do a custom filter. Let's say that we want to find people who were born before 1960. Those folks are close to a retirement age, and we have special programs for them, and we would like to contact them to let them know about those programs. So what we could do then is find people who were born before 1960. So we'll do the before. Now, the only thing about dates is, because all of your information within that column is written as a date, your criteria also needs to be written as a date. So instead of saying just plain 1960, for this to work right, I need to put, say, January 1st, 1960, and then click OK. And so now I find my people who have a birthday that is prior to 1960, and I can very easily then contact them. Well, let's remove that filter, and I'm just going to clear the filter from birth date. And let's also find the people who have been employed somewhere between 5 and 10 years. Maybe we have a recognition program for them. So let's go to that drop down. And again, I can go to the number filters to find what I'm looking for. And with the number filters, I don't have as many options as I do for the dates, but I still have equals, not equal, greater than, less than, and I have a between. But before we go to between, we can even see that we have top 10, above average, below average, and then always we have the option of a custom filter. Well, let's go to between. And so here it's already kind of set things up for me. So I can say, well, I want to find these cells that are greater than or equal to 5. And anytime you have a range of numbers, you always use and that's already selected for me. And then is less than or equal to, so we'll put 10 and click OK. And so now we have everyone who's been employed between 5 and 10 years, well, including the 5 and the 10. And again, we can remove that particular filter by clear filter from years employed. Now, one thing that we do need to keep in mind is that I still have this auto filter button on, and what happens is it can cover up the column headings, and so then you find yourself trying to widen column headings, and occasionally when you're trying to print, that's just, well, sort of annoying. And some people really don't like to see those auto filter buttons on the column headings if they are not actually filtering. So what we might need to do is just turn off the auto filter button, and probably the best way to do that from our home tab is to go to sort and filter, click on that button, and then we can kind of see that filter has a gray background here. We'll just click on it again to turn it off, and then that removes those auto filter buttons. Well, we can also use filtering options from the Data tab. Now, the Data tab is about the 5th tab on the ribbon, so let's click it. And when we go to the right, of course, with the Data tab, Sort is really separated from Filter a little bit more, and we get this really nice big filter button, so let's click on it. Now, it gives us those same auto filter buttons, but let's look at some other possibilities here, where now we might decide that we want to filter not just by one level, but by several. So, for example, let's go to the district, and we'll click on that drop down, and we will take off select all. We'll just go with West and click OK. So now we have everyone who is in the West District, and then let's say that we want to see only the people who are in California in that West District. So again, we could take off the select all and just check the box for California. And so now we only have the California stores that are in the West District, and we can see who those particular employees are. Now, when we do that, we can see that we have funnels on 2 of our columns. So one of the things that we can do is come up to the right of Filter, and rather than go to the separate columns and clear out the 2 different choices, we can come up here to the Clear button and clear them both at the same time. That can save you a lot of time and just clicking extra. Well, then we could also, for example, let's go to the East District. And again, I'm going to take off select all, go with East. And let's find the managers that are under East. So let's go to Title, Department, take off select all. We need to scroll down through our choices here until we find Manager. Click OK. Oh, well, there's only one, Frank Corwin, who is in the East District and is also a manager. But again, we have more than one filter applied, so as we go to Sort and Filter, go to the right and clear, and boy, is that a whole lot easier to deal with. Now let's also look at some other kinds of choices here. So let's find in our title and department, we're going to, of course, remove select all, but now we're going to find the clerks, the assistant managers, and IT. Actually, that's an OR logic because you cannot be IT and a clerk, for example. So we have 3 checkboxes that we have decided on, and we'll click OK. And we have quite a list here, but now let's find those who have been employed for more than 5 years. So let's go to years employed, and we could actually go through and manually check for all of those boxes that are greater than 5 years, or we can go to the number filters and we can say greater than, and we can say 5 and click OK. Boy, that was easy, but notice that we had several choices, and again we now have, well, different choices here with our title, department, and years employed. And again, we can go to clear to remove all of those different filters that we've placed on. Now, what is really interesting is, let's just find another choice here. So let's go to district. For some reason, we're interested in the central and the east, and we'll click OK. And we want to find, say, administrative assistants, and click that. And they haven't, most of them, been employed more than 10 years, so we'll just do that search or filter. But then, as we look at their last name, we realize that they aren't alphabetical by last name. And so not only would I like to filter this list, but I also want to sort it by last name. Can I do that? Well, let's see, last name, and we can certainly sort right here at the top, A to Z. And we could, if we had, say, 2 Macintoshes, we could then also sort by first name. But how complicated can we get? Well, that's up to you and your data and what you need to do. But with this one, notice that we've not only applied filters, but then we've sorted within those filters. And if we want to get back to our original data, all we do is go to the right and clear. And now we have our original data. If I want to turn this filter off so that I no longer have these auto filter buttons, notice that this filter is really noticeably has that gray background, so I can click on it to turn off the gray background, and the auto filter buttons are now removed as well. So we have filtered one column, several columns. We've applied different kinds of filters with text and numbers and dates, and we've even sorted within our results. Filters are just an amazing tool that are sometimes limited only by your imagination. So when you are asked to arrange your spreadsheet so that people can better understand it, be sure to consider using filters as one of your very first options. To learn even more, visit our mymcpl.org/online learning page, where you will find some really great online resources, which include Universal Class, LinkedIn Learning, and Learning Express Library. Tune in each week as we introduce new videos on a variety of tech topics. You can find us at 1 o'clock on Wednesday and Friday, and 2 o'clock on Tuesday. Be sure to find us on Facebook at MCPL 360, or if you prefer, be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel at MCPL-MO, where you can find our MCPL Consumer Technology Resources playlist.